Hi, my name is Sam, and this post is for anybody who might be interested in doing online administrative assistance. Um, it requires familiarity with the use of the Google Suite, which includes documents, sheets, and calendar. Predominantly the calendar to begin with, because we use it as a means of communicating points in time. So this one, for instance, I'm trying to establish whether or not a particular term exists and is properly related and linked. Once this is established, a person who is capable of doing this should be capable of recognizing certain job types and the need to schedule, relate, and link. What we do is we relate, for instance, the details on this memo go with a particular correlation to whatever is noted here. So for instance, if we're talking about a particular word, we actually group our words into a list, and that list is a typecast named word where we have the list of words and we expand it. And if they exist on here, it implies that we've instantiated it, meaning that it is documented. And then this word is typecast, meaning we group them by the same type. I get the link, and then this becomes related and linked. And it's kind of hard to explain, but once it's done, it's done. So for instance, when I save this, if anybody's going to perform this same type of effort, it's not as a direct instance to do the same thing, because once it's done, it's done. And if you inherit anything that is an object based on a value that is proper, you don't have to do that again, but you still have to go through the process so that you understand relation. So for instance, we give name to things, and we're differentiating between a word, a name, and a type. So we establish the link. So now I have a link to the documentation where I reconcile word, which is typecast, a documentation which through a hyperlink relates to the name, which is typecast, and then I'm going to have the same for a type, which is a grouping of types. So in this case, it doesn't have the name here, so I'm going to just grab the existing one for name, and I'm going to apply this here as type. And once this is done, it's done. So why do I need help? The process of recognizing and establishing relation and link doesn't change. You still have to do it. You just have a different point of focus. So my focus here as type would be established, and the process of doing this establishes an object on the calendar that somebody could inherit by way of more actions, duplicate, and then that duplicate inherits these relations and links. And what we're doing is establishing typecasting so that now word becomes an object. As an object, it has the capacity for relation and link. Until you objectify something, it's like talk. Talk is, they say it's cheap, but it's actually, it takes away from that which is precious, which is time. We don't have a lot of time, and people who talk they destroy whatever is good in life, because there's only so much type, there's only so much time. So if we objectify things, the concept is that we have something that we can point to, relate, and link. And the object that I have, or the objective, is to establish a point-based system where you could posit first that you stand in time in relation to recognizing that we're putting points in time in order to collaborate. So our base is going to be established as the foundation upon which we decide whether or not we'll stand. When you stand virtually, it is evidenced through an event, which is the entirety of this. So at this moment, I stand on this base in order that I can collaborate, and I'm attempting to reconcile a particular object to see if it exists, if it's proper, and if it's established in the system. And there's a few steps that we do in order to accomplish this. The first is exists. If something exists, it's manifest, you can see it, relate it, and link it. If it's defined, then we have a point at which we can converge and agree that is the consensus definition of whatever that focus is. Then we have it in our view, which is a format-based aspect. So we apply format so that it has a structure, and then we review it in order that we might reconcile it with others of like kind and compare it to those that are different. And we do this all on the basis of collaboration. So we're going to follow through with this, inherit the relations and links, but we're going to actually objectify each of these. So this will happen for each term. And then we'll move on to actual instances that include photos of jobs. And those jobs are given names. And many of those jobs are cyclical, meaning that I do them every month, every year, every 3 years. And some of them involve hundreds of photos indicating whether or not a certain task was performed, what the conditions were upon arrival, tooling used, process performed, and then the finality of what was accomplished. So it's actually a compliance system wherein I'm trying to establish a Missouri-style show me. Don't tell me, show me. And the show is in the point. And the point is actually to bring your attention to what underlies that point, which is it's not a thing, it's a relation. Did you do it? What did you do? And did you do it? Not to determine whether or not a person is at blame or at fault, but to see if there's a way to codify through the process that a person is engaged in an attempt to achieve relation. So when you relate, I found you're capable of greater things that might appear. I'm a pretty good technician, and it's not by dint of having intellect. I'm not a smart person. I'm just smart enough to recognize that I'm not smart. So I go to the manual and I follow the manuals. Over years of repetition, I've become habituated to just do the same steps. Is there power? Is there product? Is there connection? And when I do this, there's 7 different systems that interrelate and behave as a system to allow the storage, delivery, account, and monitoring of petroleum products. So these 7 systems come together and you have to troubleshoot, isolate, and then diagnose. It's led me to recognize that if we go on a basis of belief, we impose or project what we think. If we submit to the fact that, hey, this is too much, it's too complicated, I go back to I know nothing, and now I seek to know one particular point. And if I continue to do that, the points will add up, and the points will convey a message that actually calls back to the need to continually return to the base. I don't know, so I'm going to seek to know. And that which I'm seeking to know is directed at a particular point of focus. So for anybody willing to work, you have to come with a mindset that you're willing to leave belief, thought, and all of those concepts behind in the potential to redefine them and then potentially see them in a different light than you may have or may currently hold. So I redefined everything down to the letter as well as the point, and then recognized the division between the symbol and the token. And what it leads to is recognition of where fault points lay. There's no disagreement. There's only a lack of will to go down to a level where you find a divergence between what is and what other people are projecting as ought. So in our sense, we're going to make these events. The events will be saved. They're given a name, and you can see it on the calendar. So here it is on the calendar. And now all the relations that it holds are inherited. So if I'm going to review a word, this is going to be a group of events where I review words. So you would expect this to get more specific. And then when we hold that it exists, it goes from a 0 to a 1. We'll use 0 to be an indicator of something that does not exist, but we have a place for it. And then 1 will represent something that exists. And with that existence now comes a relation. So we should be able to click on it and go to that related construct. Okay, so we give it what's called a tuple. So I have a number, a name, and a value. And I'm seeking to establish that this as a group will now become one that links to the documentation that provides evidence that when I review a word, I'm going to go through these steps to make sure it exists, it's defined. When I view it, it holds those constructs that establish the framework where, oh, we both see the same thing. Now, we're going to both look at the same thing, but until you develop an acuity of knowing what is what and bring that down to a level of, even down to the point where nothing is recognized, you'll recognize that nothing is where it should be or where it shouldn't be. So nothing or space will have value. When you give space, that's what this word implies. Kadosh is a word that implies that we set something apart, and in so doing, we establish that space is valued. And where we put space or don't evidences whether or not we honor that which essentially becomes the most important character of the alphabet. It's not the 26 that you can see, it's the one that gives space so that the others can group and have meaning. So the meaning is given in accord to that space which is ascribed. If I allow space to exist, each can stand, each can group, each can deliver not just the message, but also meaning. Jumping a little bit all over the place, but I'm trying to get it out of my head so I can move forward. But each of these will be linked, related, and by that link, you can navigate to that place. In terms of online admin help, you should be able to post on the calendar and show the time that you were online. And with that regard, you have an object that also has a focus. A focus is a point at which will bring attention, and the attention should be for an objective. And the object that you have in mind is going to be given a name, and that name implies that you're going to perform action on an object, which calls for a workflow. And then the workflow is the steps or the process you use to achieve the goal, so that when you do something, inherent in the process should be very clear that I started here, these are the checkpoints, and I followed this path, and this was the result. So we're not focusing on the result, we're focusing on the process. The result will come if the process is refined and if the truth is established as a base. The results manifest. Thank you.